Hey, it's me, Lady Pelvic of Pelvic Gaming. Today we discuss Wild Arms 3, released on the PlayStation 2, March 14th, 2002. Once again, reminding me why I typically don't revisit PlayStation 2 games despite having an incredible JRPG library. If you're new here, I've already reviewed Wild Arms 1 and 2, check those out after, and without further ado, here is my thoughts on Wild Arms 3. Can you tell I'm really excited to talk about it? You are Virginia Maxwell, Wild Arms' first lady protagonist on a train. But something's up. You hear there's precious cargo and someone may be after it. Just as you take a look, three others break in, guns out, and bam! An awesome introduction sequence to all the characters. Go through all four stories to understand what brought them all to this very moment. Wild Arms 3 has a fantastic opening, but sadly, it drags its feet soon after. The characters temporarily team up after hearing a no-good group is after the treasure. Here you meet Janice Cascade, the bad boy who you can expect to be a constant thorn in your side. After fending off Janice and his posse, Virginia and her team agree to split up at the next town. Homegirl doesn't want to part ways and somehow convinces the crew to stick together, and they never really have a clear goal. Sure, there's mention of four people who will come and swoop in to save the dying land of Filgaia with the aid of the Guardians. So they get the Guardians and it's like, okay, cool. They hear a rumor about the Eternal Sparkle and three seals, demons, ancient technology, yada yada. And following that trail leads them to exactly that. Demons, ancient tech, the reason why Filgaia is rapidly decaying. And that's fine. As the story unfolds, it does get better, like 10 hours in, but my god, is it slow and boring. My theory is it's because the characters. Their bond never felt organic. It was like, hey, here's your party that you know the bare minimum about, and what you do know isn't very captivating. Virginia is a hometown girl who misses her daddy, who abandoned her for some reason. She leaves her town to become a drifter, someone who goes off and explores. It's not her love for adventure, she just wants to help people by being a drifter. That is the most lame reason ever. If you want to serve people, become a knight or a traveling doctor, or even wanting to become a hero. It just seemed silly to become a drifter to help people. Jet? Listen, I love me an angsty lone wolf, but even he's lacking some kind of hook, though he does get more love toward endgame. Gallows, a Baskar, aka an indigenous folk who wishes to do away with tradition and live freely. He probably has the most interesting setup, but his personality is laziness and constantly letting the party down with its frequent lack of spiritual knowledge. And lastly, Clive, a mercenary / archaeologist. He's supposed to be the mature one, and he's serviceable. This cast just seems so minimal. Throw an archetype their way and that's them. It felt like most didn't get past the outline phase of their creation, having a decent base and were never fleshed out. I never sincerely cared about any of them. When they do find their resolve, I can't help but to roll my eyes. A moment that was supposed to be a character's breakthrough always felt mundane to me, because I was never really rooting for them in the first place. Wild Arms 3 is so rich in world building and had an interesting story despite it taking forever to take off, but the cast you journeyed with was really dull. Even the rival drifter team was so try-hard. Maya Schrodinger wanted to be Calamity Jane from Wild Arms 1 so bad, but never captured her selfish and pompous attitude. She even had a butler, Todd, just like Jane's McDullen. It was like they came to terms that they couldn't outdo the first Wild Arms, so they just copied and pasted and zapped away any originality. Thankfully, Wild Arms 3 didn't drop the ball with villains. Janice Cascade is a unique twist on the reoccurring joke villain Wild Arms tend to have. Although I didn't find him much of a joke, but more of a red herring. The Prophets had an interesting story, and at least a little more personality built into them. Better than Wild Arms 2, not better than Wild Arms 1. Mentioned before, one of the best aspects of Wild Arms 3 is the world building and the insane amount of callbacks of the previous two games. I love that this time around, it implies that the solution of Wild Arms 1 wasn't such a great idea, and this is the result of that. Now, I couldn't find anything confirming that any of the Wild Arms games are directly connected. It's really all speculation of different dimensions, or perhaps the same world but millenniums apart. There are reoccurring themes like the Guardians, Filgaia becoming a wasteland, and Arms. Along with the many story similarities, there's also gameplay similarities and differences, and for the most part, I liked it. Unlike previous games, you have a set party of 4 at your command. You're offered a few different options: a standard attack, use a force ability which consumes force points, or FP, these are gained by attacking or being attacked, and magic skills which can be used based on how much FP you have. So if you have at least 10 FP, you will always be able to cast magic with 10 FP or lower. The moment you spend it, you can no longer cast. Your starting FP is equal to what level you are. And I love this because in the beginning, you can't cast spells that are 10 FP. But as you grow, you can have immediate access to them. Things begin to change when you notice X character has a set amount of bullets before needing to defend to reload. Every character has an arm, and every character can cast magic. Every arm allows for 15 maximum upgrades, damage, critical weight, etc. You'll be dumping boatloads of money into these things. Secondly, Wild Arms 3 does away with crest graphs, objects that taught a character magic. Now, everybody learns magic with Guardians. Guardians can be equipped for stat increases, but also dictates what magic the characters have access to. There are a lot of trade-offs to be had here, because sometimes a Guardian ups physical attack, but the magic attached to them would be better suited for Gallows, your mage. In addition, you can equip Guardians with unique items that prevent status effects or offer various personal skills. The catch is if you unequip them, then the item is gone for good, so choose wisely. But just because you equip the Guardian with the item doesn't mean you get the boon right away. Personal skill points make a return. You equip the item that prevents poison. You must put 4 skill points to be completely immune. As you progress, you'll find more useful abilities like counterattack or defender. And this brings me to the greatest thing ever, something I believe should be in every JRPG. Being able to completely rework your setup. Yes, in the beginning of each round, you'll have the option to swap around your Guardians, equip them with items, and redistribute all personal skills. Think about it, how many times have you died to a boss only because you came in ill-prepared, and there was no way to rework the arrangement? If you are not equipped with a sleep ward, tough titties, it's gonna be night-night for you. In Wild Arms 3, there is no excuse. At your worst, you won't have items to alleviate whatever status ailment you come into contact with, because like all the other Wild Arm games, 3 loves their status ailments. As long as you play the game as it was meant to be played, it's a really easy game. That said, they did make regular enemies a bit tougher as most don't die in one hit, unlike Wild Arms 2. Gimel coins return, allowing the player to save anywhere, including dungeons, or instantly retry after a game over. Let me tell you, the only time I died was during ambushes, when one player is caught alone. Otherwise, I've never used a Gimel coin. I gotta say, Wild Arms 3 suffers from PS2 slog. One of the best things you can do early in game is turn on turbo mode, and what's hilarious is the game is still slow. Animations, them running in circles around each other, and other PS2 annoyances like trying to land your sandcraft or jump with your horse. The characters are pretty quick to figure out who is good at what, except fucking Virginia, the main ass fucking character. Clive, sniper, so you think precision, which means critical hits and damage, reload often, cool. Jet, speedy, lightweight gun, does pretty decent damage, doesn't need to reload often, dope. Gallows, his tutorial was all about magic uses, so he's the mage. Physical damage is shit. Virginia, she she has dual guns, so she attacks twice. No, she doesn't. Okay, well, Virginia later probably gets a special form or power up. Nope. Virginia is just as boring in combat as her character is. Like, she isn't even a jack of all trades, master of none. She has the second highest magic stat and speed. So I mainly gave her support magic since she usually went before everyone else. But man, was that disappointing for a main character. Beyond combat, mainly exploration, which also has its similarities and differences. In the previous game, you can block the majority of random encounters endlessly. Now they have a system in place, the ECN, or the encounter gauge. Whenever you avoid an encounter, the difference between your migrant level and the enemy is subtracted from your ECN. Should your migrant level exceed that of an enemy, you can avoid the encounter without affecting your ECN gauge. Your ECN gauge will regain 1 point after winning each battle. If you don't have enough points, you're automatically in battle. I like depending on how you move has some pull to your encounters. If you run, you're likely to get an encounter, versus if you tiptoe. I am so sad to report that the search system is back, meaning you wander the vast wasteland hitting the search button endlessly until something pops up. And get this, let's say you're in Japan, right? You're in Tokyo. You wander actively looking for Osaka. You can't find it until someone in town tells you Osaka exists. It won't pop up in your maps. That's how this works, and I find that to be complete bullshit. Until you trigger something, X landmark does not exist. Listen, I fucked with this in Wild Arms 2, I absolutely did not in Wild Arms 3. After maybe the first few towns and dungeons, I pulled up a guide. I could not be bothered not doing this again. Dungeons are still good though. I think Wild Arms 2 had the best dungeons still. The biggest addition to dungeons was the verticality. Each character gets a unique set of tools that are used to navigate dungeons. Gems have more purpose now. White gems restore the ECN gauge, while orange ones restore vitality. Vitality is a bar that fully restores characters' HP after every battle. If the bar runs out, the character doesn't get healed. I like this because you cannot buy health items, unless you go to the black market, you know what I'm saying? You can find restoratives, or you can grow them if you take on side quests. Wild Arms 3 is loaded with side quests, or more so optional boss battles. I was done with this game, so I didn't really bother. Most of the optional dungeons were the Millennium Puzzles, a callback to Wild Arms 2. They're block puzzles. Solve them and gain a reward. I did more than half, and I now low-key hate block puzzles. There are telepath towers, which are just towers, but defeat enough of them and new enemies might appear. After finishing a dungeon, you're thrown back into the overworld, which is so goddamn dull. I get it's a wasteland, but adding the scan feature and not allowing landmarks to pop up just because you don't know about them didn't help. Traversing the lands were made easier by horse, and even cooler are the battles while riding. Unfortunately, there isn't anything mechanically different. Speaking of traveling, the Sand Sea and fighting with the Sandcraft is also really stupid. You don't know what you're doing half the time, and you're only really given two options if you want to attack. There's just no threat here. You have so much HP, you're harpooning and flash bombing the poor thing until the option to attack comes up. It's not much different when you take flight either. They're not exhilarating in the slightest. Towns are pretty barren. They're here to heal and gain information. There's an ask system. Just click the highlighted word to learn more. And some NPCs have different dialogue depending on the party leader. So I'm kind of up and down about the gameplay. The combat's good, but the exploration is mid to bad. What I did really enjoy is the big jump into 3D. Normally I get paranoid about that stuff from pixel to 3D, but Wild Arms, cel-shaded? Okay, I dig it. I am a huge fan of expressive portraits, which were shown in the dialogue boxes. Even NPCs got portraits, which were nice. The main characters and important NPCs got a little more love with various looks. Also, I recommend playing this on PS4. It's sharper, more detail, and I like how scratchy the colors look. It's not something I see often, so I appreciate the stylistic choice. They sometimes have lines over their faces or garments, kinda giving the JoJo vibe. Love the loud colors. I thought the character models were fine with their big ass hands. Dungeons were pretty alright. Each room had a different puzzle, spliced with some uneventful rooms. Like the games before, Wild Arms has a beautiful animated opening, but what's different is as new villains are introduced, a segment of the opening changes, so you'll always want to keep an eye out. And speaking of openings, it grew on me. I wasn't crazy about Wild Arms 3 opening at first, but I've come around. Still no Wild Arms 1 though. Frankly, I think Wild Arms 3 has my least favorite soundtrack of the games I've played. Still composed by Michiko Naruki, it's not that she doesn't quite capture the Wild Westerner themes, in fact she does so very well in battle and in towns. But I felt the dungeons were severely lacking. I never got that sense of adventure from any of the dungeon themes. They were curious sounding, but never gave that go-getter vibe I was looking forward to. In any case, my favorite track is the Prophet themes. Anytime you're about to fight them, expect to hear this dangerous and alien song, Black as Sin, Red as Blood. Wild Arms 3 overstays its welcome. So many red herrings, and when you think you defeated the final boss, you didn't. There's this whole other thing going on that if you're not paying close attention, you'll miss. I don't think a long game equates to a bad game, but when you have a boring and aimless beginning with half-baked characters, and you just don't really give a damn about anything, it makes it feel that much more sluggish. Wild Arms 3 gave me the same energy of Suikoden 4. It was very flat and you just didn't care, but at least Suikoden 4 had the decency to be short. The callbacks to Wild Arms 1 and 2 are appreciated, although sometimes it felt like a crutch, like Calamity Jane. You know, everyone loves Calamity Jane, so we gotta like throw a Calamity Jane knockoff in here, Maya, you gotta like her because she's like Calamity Jane, you know? For the most part, the gameplay has taken a step in the right direction. They just need to remove that search feature. It's dumb. My favorite part of this game, hands down, is the world building, but even so, I cannot, in good faith, recommend Wild Arms 3, because the payoff was just so underwhelming. Thank you so much for watching. Top box for more videos like this, and the bottom box is Normal Boots Hardcore. Don't forget to check out my Patreon and the Normal Boots store for some sweet, sweet merch. Love your faces, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!